The draft. You know, the day that fans of all the terrible teams finally get that brief, fleeting moment of happiness when the GMs gather around to decide which teenager they think is going to be the best fit to revive their franchise. Now, that's what it should be. You know, the truth is, this is one of the most nerve-wracking days of the entire year as a sports fan, because it's not always going to go your way. And with that, it can also be a heartbreak. You know, as a lifelong Canucks fan, I can wholeheartedly say there's been a shit ton of heartbreak in the draft. Now, I was having a wonderful day, but I just decided, hey man, let's just destroy all of that. Fuck that good day. Let's look back at every single Canucks draft pick ever. Let's go. This whole curse, misery, madness, despair, whatever bad word you want to use to describe the history, it's been going on since day one, so yeah, let's go back. We're going all the way back to the birth of the team and the birth of this curse and the misery, because I don't know if any of you guys have heard this story, but take it to 1970s draft lottery. So yeah, we get into 1970 and the Canucks were an expansion team here, paired up with the Buffalo Sabres. So with the draft lottery, instead of being like straight up rigged like it is now, they did it Wheel of Fortune style, where they get a spinner that has numbers 1 through 12. So it's 1 to 6 is Vancouver's pick, 7 through 12 is Buffalo's, simple as that. And there was a big prize, one of the 70s most dynamic players in Gilbert Perreault. Just an absolutely electrifying superstar that many saw as the ultimate Kickstarter to a franchise. So the wheel gets spun, silence fills the room. The clicks of the wheel spinning are the ambience in a room filled with anxiety. And just as the wheel is slowly but surely ticking down in speed, to the Canucks' absolute shock, they get Gilbert Perreault. They have the ultimate Kickstarter to a franchise. This is unbelievable. Wait, what? What do you mean that's... Oh my fucking god, that's 11. Oh my god, it says 11. It says 11. Oh my fucking god, it says 11, bro. Are you fucked? Why the hell would they put a 11? Whose fault is this? Why would you do that? So yeah, these assholes celebrated winning the lottery, even though they didn't win shit. They won 2nd overall pick, and these assholes in Buffalo got Gilbert Perreault. God fucking damn it. What a... Alright, well, we're in 1970 now. Although I was crying about losing the lottery, I mean, we still get 2nd overall. It's not the worst thing ever. So, 2nd overall pick, we took, our boy Dale Talon. Now, this guy was actually solid for a couple years. Unfortunately, though, the sort of pressure and expectation put on him kind of loomed over him for his whole career and kind of became a detriment to his time, especially in Vancouver, just because of the way that we lost the lottery and all that bullshit. So, it's unfortunate, but I'd say he's more best known for his managerial career. Especially when he forgot to submit qualifying offers and just kind of screwed the Hawks over for their cap situation, which was pretty dope. He then lost his job to Stan Bowman, and we saw how that turned out for the Hawks. But, no, this guy was solid. We traded him after a little while to the Hawks because they, for some reason, decided Talon was a replacement for Bobby Hall, which is crazy. I mean, Talon wore number 9 and got absolutely roasted by Chicago fans for it, but that's besides the point. Now, sad thing is, 1 pick later is Reggie Leach. Now, that might be an unfamiliar name to some of you young bucks out there, huh? You casuals. You don't know Reggie Leach? What is wrong with you? I hate you. But, no, this guy was actually insane. Like, 1976, the year that the Habs won the Stanley Cup, ended up sweeping the Flyers, but this guy still won Conn Smythe. He was that good. And he still remains the only non-goalie to win the Conn Smythe on the losing team. He set the record for the most goals in a single playoff year, so, I mean, he wasn't too bad. Would have been nice to have him on the Canucks, but we'll settle for Talon. He's not too bad. Now, for the masses wondering what happened to our 7th and 9th round picks this year, you know, we only dealt them for Andre Boudreau. Hello, everybody. After filming this video and I'm in the process of editing, I realized I butchered this guy's name. It's actually Andre Boudreau. So sorry, Andre. Anyways, back to the video. The first ever star in Canucks franchise history. Just kind of felt like throwing this in there because honestly, it's kind of sad, but this is actually still one of the best trades in Canucks franchise history. Now, 1971, we took a different approach. We saw the Habs were really good, and they have a lot of French Canadians, so we just drafted only French Canadians. Top 3 guys were solid. I mean, I don't even want to attempt to pronounce this dude's name, but he was really good. Unfortunately, his career was cut really short by crippling shoulder problems, so that sucks. But Bobby Lalonde ended up having a decent career. He ended up winning the most exciting player for 3 straight years, which is pretty cool. But that's about it, so let's move on. Yeah, so 1972 is actually a pretty solid draft because...
Let me introduce you to the other Dons. Don Duck, Donkey Kong, Don Amnesia, forget about it. Don Onomatopoeia, bang. The land Don Under.
You come to me today on the day me daughter's barbecue.
Don Imus.
The Rutgers basketball team is black and disgusting.
That's a wrap for Don Imus. Finally, the scariest Don of them all.
Don Lever, who was our 3rd overall pick this season, he actually turned out to have an amazing career, especially with the Canucks, because for the longest time he actually held the record for most goals in a single season. It was broken in the mid-'80s by a name you'll hear about soon, but it was a solid pick.
Yeah, this guy's tenure in Vancouver was great, and when it was finally up, we ended up flipping him for Darcy Rhoda, another player who was solid in those 80s years, so no complaining. Now, although Steve Shutt was picked 4th overall, the next pick, no real complaining, because Don Lever ended up having a 1,000-game career. Okay, now, 1973 was actually really solid because, first of all, 3rd overall pick, Dennis was really good as a rookie for the Canucks, and he was really solid for a couple years, too. Now, till Trevor Linden came around, this guy had the record for most goals as a Canucks rookie.
And in his first year, he ended up leading all the rookies in the entire league with goals.
This guy was a complete bright spot on this Canucks team, but unfortunately, with the departure of Andre Boudreau...
Hello, everybody. After filming this video and I'm in the process of editing, I realized I butchered this guy's name. It's actually Andre Boudreau. So sorry, Andre. Anyways, back to the video.
His centerman, who he had great chemistry with, his production was simply never the same. He never lived up to the success that he had in years prior, so this was an unfortunate little situation, especially when you take into consideration that Lanny McDonald was taken with the very next pick. And as for the other pick, Bob Daly, this was actually a solid pick as well, because this guy was pretty solid with the Canucks, and then we dealt him over to the Flyers in a
terrible trade,
because he ended up being really good on the Flyers for the next couple of years there. Alright, and 1974 comes around, so this was also a solid draft, but not for our high picks, even though our 2nd rounder Ron Stadelbauer had a 40-goal year, and also hilariously shares a record with Rick Nash for least amount of assists in a 40-goal year. He was sort of a one-year wonder type of guy. Now, it was more the later picks that turned out to be storylines, because first off, we didn't even have our 1st rounder, because we gave it to Montreal, so they had our 4th overall pick, but it amounted to nothing, so no worries there. Now, let's get into the actual pick. Now, this was an absolutely amazing selection because in the 4th round, we took Harold Snepsts. Now, when it comes to those responsible, efficient, stay-at-home defenseman rocks, Harold Snepsts is up there as one of the best to ever do it for the Canucks. He also remains one of the most beloved players by fans in the franchise's entire history. Throughout his 1,000-game career, he actually was named to 2 All-Star teams as well, and during that 1982 run, him and Richard Brodeur were the absolute heart and soul of the defensive side of things. Now, unfortunately, due to Harry Neal coming in and just kind of fucking the whole team over, he was a victim of a trade, and fans hated it. Simple as that. Fans did not want to see him leave. Now, although he came back later on in his career, it was one of the many moves that defined Harry Neal's time as a GM in Vancouver. Now, although this was a good pick, there was also a really annoying scenario that happened because with Mike Rogers, who was drafted a bit later in the draft, he was also drafted into the WHA, and this was in the mid-70s, so he sort of had a choice, and he was like, okay, well, am I going to go to these Canucks that just completely suck, or am I going to go play with the Oilers? So he played with the Oilers, and he was really solid there for a couple years, and especially in his first 3 NHL seasons, where he joined some elite company, being one of the few players to have 100 points in his first 3 NHL seasons. Now, we were talking about annoying scenarios. The next season was just a dud of a draft, and same with the year after, but I think the best way to sum up these next 2 years is our 1st round pick in 75 ended up becoming a stockbroker 8 years after drafted, so that's a great look. But if we're being serious, though, Rick Blight actually had a few really good seasons with the Canucks, but an injury in 1979 to his knee kind of plagued the rest of his career, and Harry Neal taking over didn't really help because his ice time just plummeted, and sort of led him out of hockey, which in turn led him down a deep, dark path that, unfortunately, in 2005 became too much because Blight was found dead about an hour outside of his hometown, and it was ruled a suicide. So, in all seriousness, Rest in peace to Rick Blight. If you guys want to learn any more about his story, there's a wonderful article written on the province about it. So I'll leave a link to that one down below. And yeah, we'll move on to 1976. Now, like I was saying, this draft was also a bit of a dud. We had Bob Mano drafted early in this draft. I mean, he didn't really do too much for the Canucks. He was an all-star in 1982, kind of a one-year wonder sort of feel, but he ended up going to Italy and playing in like their Olympics and like World Championship teams, which is pretty cool. But apart from that, this draft had absolutely nothing going for it.
Hey, what are you fucking idiots doing?
What?
Get back to work. What the hell?
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, so 1977 rolls around. So we did possess a 4th overall pick this year, but it absolutely flopped. It's okay though, because in the 3rd round we took goalie Glenn Hanlon. Now this guy, ironically enough, was actually the first goalie in NHL history to ever allow a goal from Wayne Gretzky. Shout out Gretzky for scoring his first goal and then the record-breaking goal, both against the Canucks. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, so back to Hanlon, yeah, we traded him over to the Blues in 82. I would normally get mad at this trade and be like,
Oh my god, we gave up on him like early and he ended up flourishing.
but I don't really care because we ended up getting Jim Nill back in the trade, who, he was a decent piece in that 82 run. He had a big overtime goal in the conference finals against Chicago, so that's always a plus. Now, yeah, let's take it into the next season. Let's keep rolling here. Alright, okay, so although there is a lot of good in this draft, we gotta start with the terrible here. And oh my god, this is brutal. So, we have Builder Lago, was our 4th overall pick here. Now, you're probably like, who the fuck is that guy? Well,
this guy was an unbelievable player during the early 80s.
Unfortunately for the Canucks, he was part of one of the worst trades in franchise history. So him and a pick that we'll talk about later on were paired up and traded to the Leafs in exchange for Tiger Williams. Now yeah, Tiger Williams was a complete fan favorite, one of the big parts of that 82 run, and had a couple solid years with the Canucks, but the real annoying part of this is just the fact that we traded him for absolutely nothing. Now, my god, this trade aged so bad, because first off, Derlago got 30 in like 4 different seasons, and he got 40 one of those years, and that's not even talking about the other piece. We'll talk about the other pick that we ended up trading later on, because oh god. Now, although that whole scenario was annoying for Canucks fans, the Kurt Frazier pick was actually really good, because he was a solid piece in the 82 run, loved to muck it up, rack up the penalty minutes, you know how it was back then, but not only that, we were able to flip him for Tony Tanti, and Tanti was unbelievable. He had this stretch where he was voted most exciting player for 5 years in a row. This guy almost had 5 straight 40-goal years, set the record for most goals in a year, 2 All-Star Game appearances. This guy was awesome for a couple years there. And it just keeps getting better. In the 3rd round, we took Stan Steamer Smeal. Now, it's near impossible to put into words how integral this man was for many years on the Canucks, because similarly to Bo Horvat, the second he touched foot on the ice, you knew that one day he was going to be the captain, no matter what. And before the NHL, this guy was already a local legend, because in the late 70s, this guy was the man on the nasty New Westminster Bruins teams that won 4 straight WHL championships and 2 Memorial Cups. And in the 1978 Memorial Cup, Smeal was just unbelievable. This guy had 14 points in 5 games, ended up taking home tournament MVP, just unbelievable stuff. Now, Smeal was always recognized as a fearless player, and I think it was officially put on the map in the first shift of training camp.
Smeal's first shift at Canuck training camp, when he ran Harold Sneps into the corner and punched the glass right out of the boards, and everybody in the building went, wow.
It was just a thunderous hit. And I remember Harry Neal said Stan Smeal made the team on that one shift.
And he translated well into the NHL. Now, his first season was a solid year, but it was the second season where he really started taking over. He led the Canucks in scoring. He was a point-per-game player. Now, it was during the 1982 run where I think it was really cemented that this guy was the real deal, because he was second on the team in scoring. He was over point per game. And it was during this run that the whole hockey world
started catching on to noticing Smil's style of play and noticing how he was the heart and soul of the Canucks. One of the people to notice was Harry Neal. He stripped Kevin McCarthy of his C and handed it right to the 24-year-old Stan Smil. And in his first season of captaincy, he did not disappoint. The line of him, Gradin, and Rhoda was among one of the best in the entire NHL, and he just kept on breaking records. Most points in a season, most points in a single month, longest point streak, and then later on he kept on breaking records. Most goals he ended up getting, most games he ended up getting, longest tenure as a captain he ended up getting. Now, who knows what could have happened with Smil, because a serious knee injury in 1986 really affected his play, and he had a really steep decline after this. Now, we all remember he was inches away from being the hero in Game 7 against Calgary in '89, but unfortunately he wasn't, and he actually was held scoreless in that entire series. And after an unbelievable time in Vancouver, Smil rightfully had his number retired. Having retired leading every statistical category for the Canucks and having his number 12 hanging from the rafters for over 30 years, I think it's safe to say that this is one of the best picks in Canucks franchise history. I still see your shadows in my room. Well, you know what they say, you know, what goes up must come down, and yeah, that success was short-lived because 1979 was an absolute nightmare. Now, although this was one of the greatest drafts of all time, somehow the Canucks just ended up completely fumbling this entire thing. So let's go into this. So on face value, we look at this draft and we see, oh my god, we drafted 3 players that played over 750 games. It's a great draft. Well, you actually look at this, these guys didn't even amass 200 games combined for the Canucks because we gave up on every single one of them way too early. Alright, let's quit the whining and get to the explaining. Now, so if you remember earlier, I was talking about the Tiger Williams trade and how shit it was, and how there was another pick that I didn't even mention yet. Now, yeah, we had the 5th overall pick this year, and guess who we took? Rick Vive. Now, you're probably like, what? This guy was sick. Why is this a bad pick? Asshole. He wasn't good on the Canucks. We didn't even give this guy a sniff before we traded him away.
Like, what the hell, Canucks?
Yeah, we got Tiger Williams. Yeah, he was a fan favorite. Whatever.
Because Vive and Gerlago ended up forming an amazing 1-2 punch on the Leafs for many years to come, and it was just so stupid because it's like, dude, we gave up on a 5th overall pick.
Not even halfway into a season.
And we just decided, hey, fuck this guy, let's just chuck him away. It's like, dude, what, like, ugh. It's kind of hard to explain how goddamn good Vive was, but I think the best way to put it is, this dude is, at the time of recording this, equal with Austin goddamn Matthews for amount of goals with the Leafs. Like, how fucked is that? And until Matthews got 60 the other year, this Vive guy had the fucking record for most goals in a year. Like, oh god. Now, the next pick that we had, Brent Ashton, ended up going on to have a pretty solid career. Now, the funny thing about this guy is, until Mike Sillinger came around, this guy held the record for most times traded with 9 times. So this guy was just a complete suitcase, but he ended up amassing a pretty solid career. Now, out of the many different trades that Ashton was involved in, I think the coolest one is actually the one where we dealt him away, because in return we got the rights to Ivan Hlinka. Now, that might be a familiar name to a lot of you, and you wouldn't be crazy for thinking that, because he actually has a tournament named after him. They don't just do that with nobodies. This guy was an insanely important figure in the history of hockey. Hlinka was one of the first Czechoslovakians to ever play in the NHL. Now, he's even better recognized, similarly to Boris Salming, for the fact that not only did he defect over, but oh my god, he was good with the Canucks. He only played for 2 seasons, but the mark this guy left was unbelievable. And there's 3 moments that sort of define Hlinka and his greatness, and especially the sort of legacy that he has back in Czechia. The first one is 1969, first of all, they beat the Soviet Union, and this was one of the biggest victories in international sports history, because it was one of the first times that there had been a riot over sports. And the ever-growing popularity of Hlinka had exponential growth in 1972 when he ended up helping Czechoslovakia win their first ever world championship. Now, when it was officially announced that this guy was the man was in 1976 in the Canada Cup. He ended up leading Czechoslovakia to the final. And this was an absolute shock around the entire hockey world, and although they did lose in heartbreaking fashion in the final, it is still widely regarded as one of the greatest sporting accomplishments in Czechoslovakian history. To top everything off, after his playing career, he was a coach, and he was the coach that led the Czech Republic to the 1998 Olympic gold medal. Now, I know that was a bit of a tangent, and I'm sorry, but I just felt like that was information that needed to be known, because honestly, I had no idea who Hlinka was either, and considering that the U18 tournament is slowly growing to be one of the biggest in the world, it's something that everyone should know. And
I mean, shit, man, who knows how the future of hockey could have held up if it wasn't for Hlinka. This guy paved the way for so many great superstars in the league.
Don't worry, the rambling is over. Let's go back. And then there was Dirk Graham. I mean, this guy was sort of a journeyman for a bit there, because he never really got a sniff in the NHL, and the Canucks were the first team to give him a chance, and they just didn't. And then he went to Minnesota, had a couple solid seasons, and then he's best remembered for his time in Chicago, where for about 6 seasons he was actually the captain, and also took home the Selke Trophy in 1991, and also helped lead them to a Stanley Cup Finals appearance in 1992. So before retirement in 1995, he had a great run there as a good leadership defensive forward role, which is another thing where it's like those Canucks teams in the early 90s really could have used someone like that. And it's just too bad that we let him go so early on in his career, where we didn't really even give him a sniff. Well, that's quite the way to outro this video, is looking on a mismanaged Canucks asset. But anyways, I originally planned to do every single draft pick in one video, and we're 22 minutes in and I haven't even got to the 80s. So I'm definitely going to have to split this up into parts, but that's it for the 70s portion of this. You know, stay tuned for the other decades. Hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, that's it for me, man. I'll see you guys in the next one. God, this fucking sweater smells like shit, bro. Whatever bad you're on, oh my god.